I think the biggest challenge that most people have is taking responsibility for their part. And when I say taking responsibility, when we say that, people are like, oh, is it my fault? And taking responsibility is not about blaming. It's not about blaming yourself or blaming anyone. It's really about taking back your power. It's not about blame. It's about this. If I don't take responsibility, I'm giving all my power to that person to change. They need to change, and I don't need to do that. And that's a very powerless place to be. And I think that the most powerful personal growth work we can do is in a romantic partnership. I want to read a quote from Jung. He said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed. And that's from his 1933 book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. And it is really true. So every time we're triggered, or every time, even in a good way, we idolize someone, it's a way for us to transform ourselves. It invites us to something. So the emotion can be very intense in an uncomfortable way or a very exciting way. Both of those, it's some reactions happening in you, and you have to figure out what that is. So I always say, you'll notice when we're projecting, when you're criticizing the other person, you're making them wrong for how they are. And you're saying, they're making me feel this way. They're making me feel like they're the ones who are doing it. And what we have to ask yourself this very simple question. When you feel yourself doing that, what part of this is me? Yeah. What part of this is me? And that is the hardest question. Everyone resists it, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And here, of course, we're not talking about abusive relationships. It's simply everyday, regular relationships.
Like he doesn't put the plates in the dishwasher and leaves them on top.
I never do that.
Or leaves the door open all night.
Right.
They're like just little things like that. Or that, didn't respect your opinion on something, or, recognize you for all the hard work you do, or not sharing the chores, and or disagreements with how to raise children. All that stuff happens.
Yeah. And so people start to think that, again, that they chose the wrong person, right? The relationships are in trouble these days because no one understands the simple principles of how the mind works, how it projects, and on both ends, right? It projects the idealized version as well as the vilified version of the other person. So how do we address this issue? It has to do with personal development, like you were saying, personal responsibility. And what that means is that you have to start asking yourself, where does that annoyance that I'm seeing in my partner, where is it in me? Like, what is the piece in me that corresponds to that annoyance, to that projection, to that trigger?
So if someone is irresponsible in some way, they forget to do something, or they, say they're going to do something but don't. It's you have to ask yourself, well, what is that trigger in me? It's not always a one-to-one. It could be I'm denying my own irresponsibility, but also what is irresponsibility trigger in me? It makes me feel unsafe. It makes me feel, uncertain. And then you start projecting that this partner and their behavior is responsible for your safety and security. And then you have to kind of look at what that is, because I think that if you just tell your partner, do this differently, or act this way, or say this differently, change your behavior or the way you're being, that's not going to solve anything. You have to ask yourself first, what is the deeper issue here? There's something underneath the surface behaviors or the conflict that you need to address first. And I always tell people, ask yourself the questions first before you approach the person, because then you'll be more clear on what's theirs and what's yours. And you have to really decide. You can't make it all them, but also you don't want to take it all on you either. But you have to decide what part is their role and what part's mine, and then you can figure this out together. It's great if you have a conscious partner who can do that for themselves too. And I remember reading a book. They were Jungians back in before I even met you, actually, or maybe when I first met you. And what they did was they drew two circles, and they crossed over in the middle. And one person would write their stuff on one side, one person would write their stuff on the other side, and then together they would look at where the overlap was. And that's where they found where they're both contributing to the conflict. And it was, I think they were fighting over directions or something. And they were like, took their little thing out. And I thought that's a really beautiful way to work, is that each person takes responsibility, stops projecting, and then finds like, where's the conflict within us that's showing up in my partner? Because the inner conflict will always show up externally if we're not conscious of it.
Well, Jung would say the real work is to integrate your personal shadow. Mm-hmm. In other words, you're going to own all those projections that you're seeing in your partner. You're going to own them in you and realize that they are aspects of your own psychology. It doesn't mean that you become those things, but that you understand those things are part of my shadow. And once you become conscious of those, then you become a different person, and it changes the relationship. Like you were saying, the meeting of these two people or two different elements is going to transform everything, because it's like a chemical formula. When you mix things, it changes the dynamics and the whole structure.